Imagine spending weeks carefully preparing reports, triple-checking every number, every sentence, every detail. And then your boss walks in, barely glances at the data, and spends the next 20 minutes ripping your work apart over commas, formatting, and wording, week after week, until one day you realize something interesting. Your boss used to do this exact job before you. So you dig up her old reports, copy her format, use her exact wording, and wait, because you already know what she's about to do. She's about to tear her own work apart. If you've ever had a boss who criticized everything you did, no matter how hard you worked, this story is going to feel painfully familiar. But the ending, the ending is pure poetic justice. So, if you love satisfying revenge stories like this, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's dive in. This happened about 19 years ago when I worked at State Street Bank in Boston. Now, before I even continue, let me say something clearly. I've had bad bosses before, but Paula was a different species entirely. The job had sounded amazing during the interview. They told me I'd be part of a specialized project team, handling complex financial operations issues that had direct visibility with senior executives. It sounded important, challenging, high impact, the kind of job that could really build your career. But within 2 weeks, I realized the truth. The whole thing was basically a mushroom farm. If you've never heard that expression before, it means being kept in the dark and fed garbage. That's exactly how Paula ran the team. No transparency, no guidance, no real involvement in the actual work. My job mostly consisted of collecting information from other departments, compiling reports, and sending weekly updates. But there was one specific report that became my personal nightmare. Every week, I had to submit a report tracking oil warrants out of Nigeria. Now, for anyone unfamiliar with financial jargon, a warrant is basically an agreement that allows someone to buy a commodity at a fixed price in the future. In this case, someone had the right to buy oil at $30 per barrel. The problem, at the time, oil prices had skyrocketed to around $90 per barrel. If whoever held those warrants suddenly decided to exercise them, the bank could take a massive financial hit. So the numbers in this report mattered a lot. Accuracy was everything, and the numbers were always correct. Always. But Paula never cared about the numbers. Instead, every week, she would sit there, flipping through my report like a bored critic reviewing a student essay. Then it would start. Why did you use this phrasing? This paragraph feels awkward. The formatting here is sloppy. Why is this bullet point structured like that? It never ended. Week after week, she'd nitpick the tiniest, most meaningless details. Not the financial data, not the risk analysis. No, she cared about things like whether a sentence sounded slightly different from the week before. I remember sitting in her office one afternoon while she circled a sentence with a red pen. She leaned back in her chair and sighed dramatically. This report just doesn't read well. My jaw tightened because I had spent hours on that report and she hadn't even mentioned the numbers, which were the entire point. But arguing with Paula was pointless. So every week, I would go back, rewrite, reformat, rephrase, and every week she'd find something new to complain about. It got to the point where I started feeling that familiar sinking feeling before submitting a report. You know the one. When you know, no matter what you do, it won't be good enough. And honestly, I was already looking for another job, but before I left, something interesting happened. Turning point. One afternoon, I was digging through our department network folders looking for some historical data, and that's when I stumbled across something unexpected, an old project folder. It dated back a few years before Paula had a team, back when she had been the one writing these reports herself. Curious, I opened one, then another, and suddenly I started smiling because these reports, they looked very familiar. Same type of project, same type of analysis, same type of update format, and more importantly, they were entirely written by Paula. Her structure, her formatting, her wording, and right there, a little idea started forming in my head. A beautifully simple idea. What if next week's report looked exactly like hers? So that's exactly what I did. I took one of her old reports, studied the structure, copied the formatting, used the same language pattern she used, the same style, the same cover letter tone. The only thing I changed were the numbers and current information. When I finished, the report looked exactly like something Paula herself would have written. Then I printed it, walked into her office, office and handed it to her for review. She started flipping through the pages, and within about 30 seconds, her face changed. Her eyebrows pulled together, her lips tightened. Then she slammed the papers down on the desk. "What happened to the format you've been using?" I shrugged casually. "You didn't seem to like the previous version, so I thought I'd try something different." That was apparently the wrong answer, because Paula exploded. "This is terrible. This might be the worst report you've submitted yet." She went on and on, complaining about the structure, the wording, the formatting, the flow, everything. And the whole time, I just sat there, quiet, expressionless, letting her go. She must have ranted for 5 full minutes. Finally, she leaned back and asked the question I'd been waiting for. "What were you thinking when you wrote this?" I paused, looked her straight in the eye, and calmly said, "Actually, I didn't write it." She frowned. "What?" I slid another stack of papers across her desk. "These are the original reports you wrote for the same project a few years ago. I found them in the department archive." Her expression froze. "I used your formatting, your structure, and your language almost word for word." Silence. You could literally hear the air conditioner humming in the office. She slowly flipped through the printouts, comparing them. Her own reports, my report. They looked almost identical, and suddenly she had absolutely nothing to say. For the first time since I'd started working there, Paula was speechless. After about 10 seconds of uncomfortable silence, I asked calmly, "So, should I go back to my old format then?" Her eyes snapped up. Just a minute ago, she had said the report was basically unreadable. Now she knew exactly what she had done. She cleared her throat, grabbed a pen, signed the approval page. "No, it's fine. Send it out." I tilted my head slightly. "Just to confirm, you want me to send this version?" She looked irritated now. "Yes, it's fine. We don't have time to redo it." And just like that, the report she had called the worst submission ever became perfectly acceptable. I sent it out exactly as it was. But the best part? That wasn't the end, because I had saved every single one of her old reports, and over the next few months, the game continued. Sometimes I'd use my format, sometimes I'd use hers, and every time she started criticizing something that came from her own writing, I would casually remind her where it came from. Eventually, she realized what I had done. She asked me one day if I had copied all her old work. I smiled and told her I had actually created standard operating procedures based on her previous reports, for consistency. For a moment, she just stared at me, and then she walked away. After that, the criticism slowed down dramatically. A few months later, I finally left that job for something better. But that experience taught me something important. Some people don't criticize your work because it's bad. They criticize it because they need to feel superior. And sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't yelling or quitting dramatically. It's simply holding up a mirror and letting them see themselves. If you enjoyed this story of quiet workplace revenge, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember to share your stories in the comments about your workplace experiences. You never know which ones might be featured next, and trust me, some of those stories are even crazier than this one.